very warm good evening to all of you. Okay, that's great. Today I have a better response. So once again, we meet today to interact and discuss on the second subject that I'll be engaging with you all, which will be world history of the world. As I mentioned yesterday, I'll be engaging international relations and world history, which in many ways are actually complementary subjects. Understanding one thoroughly is going to help you to deal with the other one. And both these subjects are very interesting, very dynamic, and also very scoring. So just like yesterday, I gave you an overview regarding this particular subject of IR. Today, I will give you an overview regarding world history and how you are expected to prepare this particular subject. Okay? So I hope you are excited to learn more about world history. So how's the Josh? Okay. So how are we going to proceed? First and foremost, I will be discussing the syllabus and also exfoliating it for you. Now, what UPSC has done is, especially with regards to this subject, is it has given a single sentence cryptic kind of a syllabus. There are many topics that are beheld within that one sentence. So like a rosebud opens up and flourishes into a full flower. Similarly, we will be opening up this flower of world history and see what all it entails. We'll open up what is expected of you to prepare in this particular subject. So that will be my first part of today's discussion. Then after that, I'll be sharing some intricacies regarding preparing this particular subject. Every subject has certain nitty-gritties, a way of dealing with it, and it's important that you understand that nuance well before you actually start actual preparation. So I'll be dealing with that aspect then. Thirdly, I'll be telling you the sources and also sharing the question and trend of world history in mains, GS paper 1. Then I'll share a very interesting framework with you all. Yesterday, while discussing with you guys, I told you that you need to have a structured thought process. Okay? So today, I'm going to give you a template, which I call as the 9C template, which will be like a framework as to how you should look at any topic of history, not just of world, but for that matter, any part of history. You can use this template to check whether you have understood it thoroughly or not. That is the 9C framework. And then towards the end, we will start with our first and most important topic of world history, which will be Industrial Revolution. Okay. So with this bird's eye view of today's lecture, let us start and delve in more detail about this very interesting and very scoring also subject of world history. So let's start it, guys. So on the screen, you can see the syllabus for world history as given by UPSC. I want you all to read along with me. History of the world will include events, and I hope you note that I have made it bold and underlined it. Events from 18th century, such as Industrial Revolution, World Wars, redrawal of national boundaries, colonization, decolonization, political philosophies like communism, capitalism, socialism, etc. Their forms and effect on the society. Okay, so this is the one sentence ka syllabus which UPSC has given us. Okay. Broadly speaking, mota mota jisko hum kehte hain, you can see there are two aspects to it. One is the events starting from mid 18th century onwards. Okay. Some important events like American Revolution, French Revolution, American Civil War. These are events that we will be studying when we discuss world history. Also, we will be understanding the different philosophies that have come to shape our world today. And here, UPSC itself has been very explicit about it. It expects you to understand the philosophies of capitalism, socialism, communism, its different forms, so on and so forth. So events and philosophies, okay, broadly speaking, these can be the two pillars on which the syllabus actually stands. We'll deal with each of these two sides of the syllabus at great length. Let me first now exfoliate the syllabus for you. This is a one-sentence syllabus based on the type of questions that UPSC has been asking, its priorities when it comes to history, optional also we have studied. Based on all of this, we can come out with a list of certain specific topics that can be connected to this one-sentence syllabus. Okay? And in this slide, I'm going to list out all those topics for you. Over the course of next 12 to 15 lectures, I will be discussing each one of these topics in detail. But today itself, I'm going to list them out before you. As I told you, and I keep on emphasizing, we want to have a very structured approach. You must be very clear at any point of time as to where you stand with respect to your preparation. If you're studying world history, you must know these are the 15 topics that I'm supposed to study. If you're studying a particular topic, you must know the structure of the topic, what all that topic entails. At no point should your vision be clouded, should be hazy. Everything has to be clear. This is the mark of an administrator, clarity of thought, always. Getting my point, guys? Okay. Now, over the course of next few minutes, I will be very briefly giving you a taste of what these topics are going to entail when we study them in detail. Don't worry, each of these topics I'm going to spend ample amount of time dealing with them in detail. Okay, so right now I want you to have first a taste of these topics. So you need not jot down anything right now. Okay, everything you're going to get in the class. Don't worry about it. Okay, detailed notes will be provided. Don't worry about that. We will do a lot of answer writing also in the class. Don't worry about any of these things. Right now, I want you to follow. Remember, guys, we live in an age where there is explosion of content. Okay, you just Google one topic, American Revolution, and you'll get 10,000 videos. Okay, the intent in the class is not to just bombard you with information. The intent in the class from my side will be to develop your perspective. दृष्टिकोण यानी किस नजर से आपको अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन को देखना है, किस नजर से आपको इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन को समझना है, वो मैं देना चाहूंगा. ठीक है? So in the class, if all the time you are just trying to write down things, you will only be putting down facts which in any case they are available. They're there in the notes. They're there elsewhere also, and you will miss out on developing that perspective, which is most important. Getting my point? So perspectives will be the key. Okay, so in the class, focus on what I am trying to put across to you. All with me on this? Yes. All right, let's start. The first topic in this sequence, which we will discuss, shall be the Industrial Revolution. मराठी में जिसको हम औद्योगिक क्रांति बोलते हैं. दोस्तों, when we talk about modern times, where is it that we should draw a line that this is where modern period starts? In history, guys, there is no such absolute date. The 1st of January 1751, modern world starts. It doesn't happen that way in history. Why? Because history is a flow, it's a process. So there is no absolute demarcation that यहाँ पर में medieval खत्म हो गया और यहाँ से modern start हुआ. But there are some characteristics. काही वैशिष्ट्य असतात. When these characteristics start, that is where we say that we are having faint beginnings of the modern world. And if at all, we could name one important characteristic from where we can say the entire process of modern world is starting, I would say that Industrial Revolution is the most crucial starting point or highlight of that. Now, what is this Industrial Revolution? You've heard about this phrase very often. But at the core, very precisely, if we were to say, Industrial Revolution is a new system of production that mankind innovates around mid to late 18th century, in that period. Now, how is this system new or innovative? How is it different from earlier? Before this revolution came about, production was done by man individually with his bare hands and a few tools. Industrial Revolution brings about a fundamental change in this. Industrial revolution puts together capital, human labor, raw material, modern power, that is mechanical power, all of this in one place, which is called as the factory. Okay. Earlier, the worker was working in his cottage in the village. He was weaving a shirt or maybe making some handicrafts. He was doing it all by himself in his own cottage. But now in the city, we have a place called as factory where all these resources are put together and mass production of goods is being carried out in less time. Now just imagine earlier when shirts were made, see how many different processes had to be gone through. First, the cotton had to be plucked. Then thread or yarn had to be prepared. From that yarn, a fabric had to be woven. And from that fabric, a shirt had to be stitched. Everything being done by different people in different places, in different times, and with their own mechanical, that is their own human speed. All of this is now put aside, and we have developed machines for doing this. Consequently, it was possible to produce on a very large scale, hitherto unimagined scale, in very less time. This was a massive technological disruption that takes place from late 18th century onwards. Are you getting? So what happens because of this disruption? Mass production, less time, prices of goods fall. Machine produced, so more uniform quality. So technologically, materially, we are seeing something very different. Do you all agree with this? Right? But this revolution does not remain limited only to the field of technology. It affects economics. Now, those countries who are producing such stuff in factories, they need raw material. Factory is working 24/7. It has unlimited hunger for raw material. Keep feeding me is what the factory says. But cotton cannot be produced in Europe. Right? It has to be produced elsewhere. So this requires trading lines with countries who are there in the tropics. So this leads to the start of mercantilism, trade over long distance. Now countries want an assurity, European countries, they want an assurity of supply of raw material. So what do? They invest in creation of colonies in these distant lands so that they can control the raw materials available there. So something starts in technology, it affects economy, and then has an impact on politics also. Now countries find it necessary to have colonies because without colonies, you don't have these natural resources. Getting my point? The workers who are working in this factory, they are people who were earlier practicing farmers. But in rural areas, their farms are lost, so they are forced to go to the cities and work in factories where there are inhuman conditions. So there is a lot of exploitation of labor that takes place over here. They are living in slums where there is crime, where there are other social vices, addiction, families breaking down. So you can see a social impact also, right? So this revolution, although starts from technology, it goes on to have impact on every facet of human life. How are these things interlinked is what we are going to see when we discuss this topic of industrial revolution. Did you get my point, guys? Okay. After seeing the industrial revolution, one rule in my class, 2 rules in fact. Keep your phone silent or have a good drink. After seeing the industrial revolution, I will take you to America. Figuratively, of course, not really. And in America, we will see that the 13 colonies that Britain had established for their own interest had been living very happily in this wedlock with their motherland. But something happens around mid-18th century or slightly later than that, whereby this couple who was living happily ever before now starts to have some issues. These 13 colonies who called themselves as proud subjects of the King of Britain suddenly feel that we want a divorce. We don't want to have any relations with our motherland. The same motherland from where they have come. the same motherland with whom they share a common religion, with whom they share a common language, that is English, but they don't want to have any more relation with them. Why so? Because this motherland was exploiting these colonies for its own mercantile interests related to industry. Getting this point? So these 13 colonies decide that we will not tolerate this exploitation anymore. We want to sever, cut off all the ties with our motherland. So they usher in or bring about a revolution which leads to the independence of America, and more significantly, creation of a very new kind of polity thereafter. Americans create a state which is based on the idea of a republic. When world over, the dominant system is of monarchy. Rajashahi hoti na? And that too, what kind of monarchy? Absolute monarchy. बाहुबली देखिए कि नहीं आपने? शिवगामिनी, मेरा वचन ही है शासन. What does that sentence show? Concentration of power in the hands of the monarch. There is no challenge to the monarch. Okay? In such a world, the Americans say, we believe in the idea of a republic. What is meant by a republic? Can anyone tell me? What is a republic?
The head of the state is elected by the people.
Very good. She's absolutely right. Head of the state is elected by the people. But there is something more at the core. This is a manifestation that head of the state is elected. Okay? At the core, a republic means a system in which there is absence of birth-based privileges. जन्म के आधार पर आप कहां जन्मे हैं, as in which family, which class you have been born into, उसके बेसिस पर आपको कोई privileges नहीं होंगे. ये रिपब्लिक का सेंट्रल आइडिया है. You get this concept? And based on that, manifestation is head of the state is elected. So when head of the state is going to be elected, it is not hereditary, then every public office will be open to all. It's a corollary. Getting that? So Americans say, we believe in this idea. When the world has privileged classes, you have aristocrats, you have the clergy we saw yesterday in Europe, these feudal lords and clergy, they were having a Majjani life. Whereas the common man was eking out a meager existence. Okay, his life was full of exploitation. At such a time, Americans say, we don't want this kind of an exploitative system. We want a new kind of polity which is based on modern ideals: republic, democracy, liberty, fraternity, equality, secularism, so on and so forth. And they make a pilot project which is going to become a source of guidance for the rest of humanity for the rest of time. Are you getting this? Don't you wonder why we as aspirants of UPSC in 2022 should study something that happened in America in the 1770s? Why should we study? We study it because the ideas and institutions and values that we believe in today were first experimented and piloted by these people. Getting this point? So we understand that contribution of Americans, and then we move on. Move on to where? Now I take you to Paris, in France. And what do we see in France? We see that in France also people have been suffering for ages under an exploitative system where the king is almighty, all powerful, and his nobles have a lot of privileges in the society. They don't pay any taxes. They enjoy all the resources. This 2% population has reservation on all the jobs. No government office is open to anyone else except these people. And common man, he is suffering. So these common men who are now exposed to ideas of enlightenment and also the success of American Revolution, they stand up against their own king and demand a new kind of state similar to what Americans had tried. They spill their blood on the streets of Paris and other cities to ensure that this revolution succeeds. The cry of liberty, equality, fraternity is made out loud and clear from the streets of Paris to the rest of the world, not just Europe. And this revolution will then go on to inspire other nations of Europe and then subsequently of the world. For the first time in history of humanity, common people were standing up to the might of their monarchs and doing it successfully. It demonstrates that what common people can do if they have belief in something. I had read a quote which I really liked very much. It reads, people do a lot for money. People do a lot for money. They do even more for a leader. They do a lot for money, even more for a leader. But they do the most for beliefs. After the death of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj is also not there. But people of this region, they stand up to the Mughal Empire, leaderless, but yet they fight for 25 long years. Why? There was no leader. There was no money involved, but they do it because they have some beliefs. And these beliefs of liberty, equality, fraternity, nationalism, these were given to Europe by France. Getting this? Yes, it had happened before in America, but America was distant across the Atlantic. France is at the central point of Europe, as in politically, it's at the center stage. किसी ने बाद में कहा था, when France catches cold, when France sneezes, Europe catches cold. जब फ्रांस को छींक आती है तो पूरे यूरोप को सर्दी हो जाती है. So France was like the cultural capital of Europe. What is happening over there is going to have reverberations elsewhere. Yesterday, I told you how in medieval times, common people were living lives of ants and flies. Human existence did not have any value. The French Revolution says no. Every human personality is sacred. Every human being's life must find its fullest expression, its fullest flourish. And for finding that fullest flourish, that person must be given access to some rights. And that is what the French Revolution is out there to do. Give every individual that right. We talk a lot about our constitution. This is my constitutional right. It is there in the fundamental rights. Article 21, we keep on citing and quoting. But where has all this come from? All this owes its origin to the French Revolution. Do you understand now in a nutshell why we need to study this? Okay. After this, we will meet a very charismatic man who has left an indelible mark on the sands of time. Napoleon, a great military general who comes and becomes the emperor of France towards the end of this revolution. And like many historical personalities, he is a paradox. Paradox समझते हैं? Conflicting उसके अंदर में आपको चीजें दिखती हैं. On one side, Napoleon is an upholder of these new values and ideas that have come out of the French Revolution. And on the other side, he is also its destroyer. But he is credited with spreading these ideas to rest of Europe. We are still in Corona times. It's endemic now, but not so long ago, you might have heard about the concept of super spreader. Have you heard of that? Super spreader events, because of which there was a sudden outburst of Corona cases. So I like to call Napoleon the super spreader of the virus of French Revolution. Through his warfare, he carried the ideas of French Revolution to every nook and corner of Europe. And these ideas inspired other nations, making them struggle for the same values, ideas, institutions in which we believe today. Getting this point? So we will meet him, see his achievements and failures, and also learn about the Congress of Vienna, which will try to stop the spread of the French Revolution's ideas. Did you understand now? French Revolution, what we are going to see basically? After this, we will study the unification of Italy and Germany. Abhishek Bachchan की एक ad थी, एक idea, so tagline I'm saying, एक आइडिया जो बदल दे आपकी दुनिया. सुनिए सभी ने, right? It's a good tagline. It has a ring. Similarly, the French Revolution, the ideas that it gave, it changed the geopolitics of Europe. French Revolution gave the concept of nationalism to all of Europe. The people of France were earlier just peasants. But because of the French Revolution, they became Frenchmen. Yesterday we saw a national feeling of oneness based on common characteristic. And what was that common characteristic? Language. So when the French people demonstrated their nationalism, others also felt that we too are a nation and we too have that same feeling of nationalism. The best examples of this are the Italian people and the German people. The Germans were divided into 39 different states, and the Italians were spread across 7 different states. Their feeling of nationalism is ignited, and they go on to struggle to establish a united German and Italian nation state. So it is the success of that idea that has come out from the French Revolution, जिसका manifestation हम यहाँ पर में देखते हैं. ठीक है? It's easier said and done for us, but practically people had to struggle very hard against the old system. How did that happen? We will see in this topic of unification of Italy and Germany. Subsequently, over the successive decades, many new countries will be born. Greece got independence. Okay? In 20th century, Poland is created. Czechoslovakia is born. Hungary is created. Serbia is created. Many nation states are born. Why are they being born? Because of these ideas. Getting this? How an idea can change the face of a full continent. That is what we are going to see in this topic. Then we again go to USA, and this time study a very big trial or test that this nation country had to go through. America was successful in its revolution, and over the next few decades, it marched on in terms of economic political progress. But there were some inconsistencies in the economic models of North and South, northern states and southern states. The southern states were based on agriculture, especially plantation agriculture, and required slavery on a big scale to do it successfully. Northern states, on the other hand, were manufacturing industry based and consequently did not need slavery but wanted cheap labor. So economic models were different. Consequently, interests were different, and interests were different. So policies were different, and policies were different. It led to different type of politics. We saw that sequence yesterday. Same thing manifests in America, leading to conflict over the practice of slavery. Abraham Lincoln got elected as president of America in 1861, and he was an avowed abolitionist. That is, he wanted to abolish the practice of slavery. So southern states, they decided that we don't want to be part of this union anymore. And that is when very firmly Abraham Lincoln said that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the face of this earth. And tenaciously, he fought for 5 years to prevent the southern states from destroying this union. The story of survival of that union is what we study in the American Civil War. At this point, here we complete half time of our syllabus. We are halfway through the syllabus here. 1870 is the period where we enter into a new phase when it comes to world history. Let us see what we see after this. Post 1870, we see a very different kind of a world in which many new countries have imperial ambitions. Germany wants colonies, Italy wants colonies, France, Britain, Spain, ye to the hi pehle se. Many other countries are vying for this. One. Number two, industrial revolution has spread to all these countries. So all of them want raw material and markets. For that, again, colonies are important. But There is limited scope for territorial expansion. This brings many European countries into conflict with one another. And because of this conflict, we see a massive catastrophic war, which we call as the World War I. We will analyze and understand why it took place, its course, and its implications for humanity. Okay. After seeing World War I, we will understand the philosophies of capitalism, socialism, and communism. What does the idea of capitalism say? By any chance, will you like to hazard a guess? What is capitalism? Okay, free market economy. Yes. Very right. Where goods are produced for exchange. So in socialism, goods are not produced for exchange. They would also be produced for exchange. For their society only. Okay. Okay. Yes. Markets are focused on profit. Okay. Yes.
Profits go to rich people.
Okay. Profits go to rich people.
They don't focus on private sector.
Okay. Very good. Yes. Excellent. That is the answer that I was looking for. He has hit the nail on the head. Capitalism as a system believes that means of production, यानी जिससे आप चीजें प्रोड्यूस करते हैं, चाहे वो लैंड हो या फैक्ट्री हो, मशीन्स हो, इसकी जो ओनरशिप है ये प्राइवेट इंडिविजुअल या प्राइवेट हैंड्स में होनी चाहिए. That is the core or essential idea of capitalism. Whenever we say capitalism, you must first think of the point private ownership. Are you getting this? Now let me make it even more simple. Capital, ये word तो आपने सुना है? Money and capital, these are two different ideas. Money is something that we use to buy and sell goods and services. But when we invest that money to earn more money or to earn profit, then we call it as what? We call it as capital. That's the difference. Now, what does capitalism believe in? It believes in investing that money into means of production through which you will produce something, and as a friend said, that will be owned privately, of course, and you will earn profit in that process. So this is the philosophy or idea of capitalism, which dominated the economy before 20th century. Okay. This capitalism was crucial for the mercantile trade that we discussed yesterday. When Europe was trading with the colonies, you needed some people who will invest their money into buying goods from distant land and selling them in Europe or vice versa, whichever way. So buying it cheap and selling it dear. आपका पैसा है, आप उसको invest करते हो कोई चीज के अंदर में, खरीदते हो, and you sell that good somewhere else and earn what in the process? Which our friend said, you earn profit in the process. A capitalist will keep on reinvesting that profit so that he will get more and more returns later. To make you understand, a very simple example, Dhirubhai Ambani started his career on a petrol pump. And today Reliance Industries is in 5G sector. He started trading in silk, first in cloth, then silk, and then everything from there to 5G, Reliance has been there. How do they do that? Invest money, earn more return, flow that back in, earn bigger return, flow that in and get more return. So that cycle continues. गालिब कहता है हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले. I have thousands of aspirations, dreams, each one worth dying for. हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले, बहुत निकले मेरे अरमां लेकिन कम निकले. This is the nature of human want. Once you are satisfied with something, the next comes up. So similarly, a capitalist is never satisfied. Okay, I have earned this much money. Now this is good enough for me. I will retire. A capitalist will go on. Cycle continues. Getting this? Yes, no, can't say? Okay. Now, there's nothing wrong with it. It's good. But the problem in this day and age was that after mercantile capitalism, it changed into industrial capitalism. A capitalist will always look for opportunities where there are better returns. Trade में क्या होता है? You buy something from X cheap and sell it to Y dear and earn profit in between. So the merchant does not have that much of control on production. Whereas in case of industry, since the entire process is in his control, he has much more scope for enhancing his profit. So capitalists went from trading to manufacturing in industries. Got this point? So the form of capitalism changed. And in the industry, since the profit motive was there, they tried to exploit the labor to maximum possible extent. You want to lower your cost of production and increase your profit, right? So one way of doing that is you spend less on labor. So this led to a lot of exploitation of labor and creation of economic gulf disparity, which our friend just said. Okay, rich became richer and poor, which is socialism. Okay? Socialism tries to bring a more economically egalitarian society. It tries to bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots. How does it do it? It does it by social ownership of means of production. Getting this? If land or other means like factories are not owned individually, but rather collectively, then what will happen? That profit will be distributed amongst everybody else rather than one or few capitalists. So this was the alternate model that was given to capitalism. That is socialism. Okay? A more refined, advanced version of that is communism. Okay. What are the exact differences? Socialism, communism? We will come to that when we discuss that topic. Don't worry. There are nuances which separate the two. But for now, I don't want to burden you with technicalities. Got this point? After this, we'll see the next topic called as Russian Revolution. Based on the ideas of communism that were given by Karl Marx, Lenin and his Bolshevik party bring about a revolution in Tsarist Russia. Russia is a monarchy ruled by Romanov dynasty. Like every other monarchy of its time, it is authoritarian, it is exploitative, it is backward. So the Russians, Bolsheviks, they stand up against its might and bring about a revolution and inaugurate a new type of a state, which we call as the communist state, communist Russia. Ever since then, till 1991, the idea of communism as an alternative to capitalism struggles in international relations. You have USA and other Western countries-led bloc who believe in capitalism, whereas USSR, subsequent version of Russia, and its allies, they believe in the idea of communism. So there is a struggle between two very different types of models for organizing your economy, polity, and society. I told you yesterday, the great thing about our species, as Yuval Noah Harari has said, is that we can collaborate on a very large scale. And state is what? State is basically that same thing, our ability to collaborate on a very grand scale. Okay? So how do we create a model of the state? One model was the capitalistic model, आणि त्याला पर्याय, त्याला alternative म्हणून, the other was the communist model. So we are going to see a struggle between these two and their proponents. Getting this point? So we'll see this in Russian Revolution and its aftermath. Then we will study the interwar period or years. After World War I till World War II, some important developments take place. First, the League of Nations was created as a neutral empire to prevent conflicts in the world. Since World War I was hugely destructive, 8 million people killed. 8 million means 80 lakh people killed and 20 million injured. Massive losses. So there was a need felt that kahan tak ja karke hum destruction karenge? We need to stop somewhere. And for that, prevention was important. So a body which was neutral and tasked with prevention of conflict is created, and that is called as League of Nations. We will see its structure and assess its contribution. Then we will see a major economic phenomena that takes place 1929 onwards, which is the Great Depression. The American economy saw a big shock to its stock markets. Subsequently, the confidence in American economy collapsed and America went into a depression. Post World War I, Europe was already economically rattled. It was dependent on America for aid and loans. Now, since America itself could not fend for its own needs, America stopped this support to Europe. And consequently, Europe got caught in the vortex of American depression. Since Europe owned a lot of colonies elsewhere, 84% of the surface area of the world was occupied by these colonies. Consequently, since Europe is affected, all its colonies were also affected. And in this manner, we see the development of the Great Economic Depression of 1930s. Got this point? We will see how the great US President F.D. Roosevelt dealt with this problem and brought America out of this brink of economic destruction. Okay. After that, we will see the rise of two gentlemen, not gentlemen actually, Hitler and Mussolini in Germany and Italy respectively. Guys, whenever there is tremendous economic strain, people look for a Masiha. They look for a person who will get them out of that crisis. Post World War I, the situation in Germany was very bad. It had lost the World War. It had to pay a lot of indemnities to other countries. Political transition had taken place to democracy. So Germany was in terrible shape. And in such times, people are in great, you can say, mental, emotional trauma. In such a situation, Hitler comes forward with a new ideology, which we call now as Nazism, and gives a program, an agenda to the people of Germany. They relish at the thought that here is a man who's ready to take charge of the situation and bring us out of this crisis, and they support him wholeheartedly, without knowing that where this man is ultimately going to lead them. Same is the case with Mussolini in Italy also. And both these men who had cast a spell on their people ultimately lead Europe and the world to another world war. We will see how that war was caused, how it was fought, and what it had, what implications it had for future in the topic of World War II. Then we will go next doors. How can we not visit our neighboring country, our beloved China? We will see the Chinese Revolution, wherein an agrarian society brought about a revolution based on the ideas of Karl Marx. Inspired by Russian Revolution, inspired by the ideas of Marx, Mao Zedong and his fellow associates bring about a revolution and create a communist state in China. Today, we are having a lot of issues with China, don't we? But if we have to understand today's China, we have to understand how this China was created in the first place. Okay? Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar म्हणतात, ज्याला इतिहासाची जाणीव नाही, तो इतिहास घडवू शकत नाही. A person who does not have understanding of history cannot create history. So, to understand today's China, we need to understand how the communist China was created and how it transformed into what it is today. I'll tell you that interesting story, not only of revolution, but also what happened subsequently after the revolution, and China became the China that we see today. It is flexing its muscle in the world. Even America is getting sleepless nights because of Xi Jinping. So how come this revolution has taken place? We'll understand all the details there. We'll see World War II, as I told you, and then subsequently we enter into the post-World War II era. Here we will discuss the successor of League of Nations, that is UNO, its mandate, structure, achievements, failures, etc. and also understand why it needs reforms and why India is demanding a permanent seat in the Security Council. All of that we will see. Then we will see decolonization and Cold War. Decolonization is specifically mentioned in the syllabus. All of the world, I told you 84% of world surface area was occupied by colonies. And suddenly after World War II, this structure starts to unravel and many new independent nation states are born. Why this sudden transformation takes place? Why the erstwhile empires are going away? Britain के बारे में कहा जाता था ना, you might have read. The sun never sets on the British Empire. Means it was so massive that at whatever time you check, some part of the empire will be under the sun. Dr. Shashi Tharoor has added a twist to this line. He says, the sun never sets on the British Empire because even God does not trust the British in dark. Because of the sort of cands that these people have done all over the world, this seems to be very befitting. A few years ago, UK's Prime Minister was visiting India. Just on a side note, I'm sharing this. UK's Prime Minister was visiting India and he was going to visit Jallianwala Bagh also in Amritsar. Since, with these dignitaries, the schedule is pre-announced, what are they going to do, where they're going to go, so on and so forth. So suddenly a demand rose in India that since he is already visiting Jallianwala Bagh, UK should express a formal apology to Indians for what happened at Jallianwala Bagh. UK refused an apology, but they did express regret. And the reason why they did not apologize was, if they would have apologized for Jallianwala Bagh, they have done so many numerous dark things that for next several years, every day they would have had to issue apologies. So that's why they are smart people. They just issued a regret and left it there. Then last topic we will see, fall of communism in East Europe and disintegration of USSR. Okay. This great revolution, the communist revolution, had spread to many countries in Eastern Europe. But towards the late 80s, towards the fag end of that decade, 1990 and 91, in that period, many of these countries chuck or throw away the communist model and accept the Western liberal democratic capitalist kind of a system. Why does this transformation takes place? Why were they disillusioned? We will see all of that. And also understand why this great experiment, the utopia, USSR, ये सिर्फ एक देश नहीं था दोस्तों, ये एक ख्वाब था. It was a dream. Dream for what? Dream to, in reality, what Karl Marx had prophesied. A system in which there will be no exploitation of man by man. Sounds very good and ideal, very inspiring, very alluring. But why did this experiment ultimately fail? Why did USSR disintegrate? And how today's Russia inherits its heritage? All of that we will see in this discussion. So, topics kya hum dekhen? So this is just a taster, guys. Don't worry. A lot of detail will follow individually when we discuss these topics. Okay. So after having seen the syllabus, let me share with you some intricacies for preparation of world history. First and foremost, like I told you about international relation, the title that we give to this part of the syllabus, world history, is also a misnomer. In IR, we don't study entire IR as academic subject. We study only India's relations with the world. Okay? Similarly, in world history, we don't study full world history. We don't study ancient. We don't study medieval. We study only modern. And within there also, we will be studying only history of modern Europe and its interconnections with the rest of the world. Getting this point? Only history of modern Europe and its interconnections with the rest of the world. That is what we are going to study. आई बात समझ में आपकी? क्यों पढ़े भाई मॉडर्न यूरोप ही क्यों पढ़े? अफ्रीका क्यों नहीं पढ़े हम? अफ्रीका पढ़ते हैं. Had these values and ideas and institutions emerged in Africa, we would have studied Africa instead of Europe. Okay. Ideas, institutions, values are very crucial, guys. सोच ये हमारी ह्यूमन लाइफ को शेप करती है. शायर लिखता है, सोच बदलो सितारे बदलेंगे. सितारे अब देखा नक्षत्र, you see the future through stars, right? सोच बदलो सितारे बदलेंगे, नजर बदलो नजारे बदलेंगे. अगर आपकी नजर बदल गई तो जो पिक्चर आपको दिख रहा है वो डिफरेंट होगा. सोच बदलो सितारे बदलेंगे, नजर बदलो नजारे बदलेंगे, कश्ती बदलने की जरूरत नहीं, रुख बदलो किनारे बदलेंगे. आपका ओरिएंटेशन, आपका अप्रोच और आपकी वैल्यूज आइडियाज ये अल्टीमेटली शेप करते हैं आपको. And the modern world is founded on the values that emerged in modern Europe. Hence, we study only that. Got this point? Okay. Next crucial aspect regarding world history is UPSC का focus किस चीज पर? You have to understand this point, guys. A lot of students fear world history because they feel that I have to remember so many facts. Napoleon कहाँ पैदा हुआ, कहाँ स्कूल में गया, टीचर का नाम क्या था उसका, कौन सी लड़ाई लड़ा. You don't have to remember facts. What you have to understand in world history, GS, is flow. Flow of history. How ideas are changing and how they are manifesting in different types of institutions. That is what we are supposed to catch. And that does not require a lot of your memory capacity. It is only about understanding. Getting this? और इसीलिए मैंने जो शुरुआत में आपसे कहा, इंफॉर्मेशन एक्सप्लोजन है. नेपोलियन की पूरी लाइफ आप पढ़ सकते हैं वहां, लेकिन मैं जो आपको आधे घंटे में, एक घंटे में नेपोलियन समझाऊंगा, that will be about this aspect. How Napoleon is at a crossroad and how he is taking Europe from a different age into a modern age, okay, by spreading these ideas. So वो मेरा रोल होगा, making you understand that flow. Getting this point? So दूसरी चीज समझ में आई आपको? Third, analytical framework. Sounds like a very heavy word. Analytical. What does it mean? Analytical means breaking down something complex into something simple. Okay? कोई चीज हो रही है, right? वो क्यों हो रही है, इसकी causes में हम चले जाते हैं. Understand its political, social, economic, cultural, etc. causes. And then what are its implications? Again, political, social, economic, so on and so forth. So understanding it in this manner, rather than just seeing it as an event, understanding उसके पीछे क्या हुआ और उसके बाद में क्या impact हुआ. That is what is required when we say you need to be analytical. Revolt of 1857 होता है. ठीक है. Modern India specifically, I'm giving example because you can relate more easily. Revolt of 1857 होता है. It doesn't happen out of the blue. Okay. It is happening based on some factors that have accumulated over several decades, not years. So what are those factors? How they are contributing to the pent-up frustration, anger of Indians is what we understand in the causes. Okay. And then that revolt, that big jolt that the British get, that shapes the subsequent interaction of British with Indians. Okay. So that we study in the consequence. So breaking down and understanding the causes and consequences is going to be very crucial for world history. Get my point? Third point मैंने ये share किया आपसे. Fourth, minimal facts. आप ज्यादा facts का burden world history में ना करें, okay? लेकिन flow और understanding इस पे आपको time देना. Next, linking with modern India. When you study world history, you must parallelly imagine what is happening in modern India at this point of time. And are they interrelated in some way? World War I starts in Europe, right? And our freedom fighters, they support the government wholeheartedly for World War I, expecting that at the end of the World War I, we are going to see the sum and essence of power, Swaraj, in India. British promised that, but what do they give? They give us Jallianwala Bagh. They give us Rowlatt Act. They give us a reform like Montagu-Chelmsford reform, which does not satisfy anyone. So is world history connected with ours? Yes, no, can't say. You all agree? Gadar movement takes place. Okay. Gadar movement, they attempt a revolution around the time of World War I. Why during that period? Because British are occupied with the war, and this is the best time to strike. Okay. So modern history and world history are interconnected. So when you study one, always imagine the linkage with the other. Got this intricacy? Yes, no, can't say? Okay. Last, seeing maps. In my notes also, I have shared a lot of maps. I'll share a lot of maps in the slides as well. History cannot be understood by divesting it from geography. कहते हैं ना, history repeats itself. Why? Because geography and psychology remain the same. समझ रहे हो? Example: Napoleon had taken an army of 6 lakh soldiers to Russia to defeat the Russian emperor. He returned with only 12,000 soldiers and barely managed to save his life. Out of 6 lakh, how many? 12,000 soldiers. After that, Hitler repeated the mistake. Had bigger mistake was Hitler did not join Unique Academy and attend my classes. Had he attended, I would have told him, okay, this is the mistake that Napoleon has done. He took an army of 3 lakh into USSR, and he also returned barely with a few soldiers. And from there, it's only a retreat for German forces in World War II. History repeats itself. And one reason was the harsh Russian winter. Geography. Okay? These forces could not survive there. And second reason, the Russians were very determined to save their motherland. Psychology. Got my point? Okay? चलिए, तो maps आपको देखना. Next is sources. Where do you prepare this subject from? Okay. So there are 2 important sources, guys. One is the NCERT called as Story of Civilization by Arjun Dev, Part 2. It's old NCERT. इसमें 2 parts हैं. See only Part 2, not 1. Okay. And apart from that, we have class notes. Okay. My notes are comprehensive. All subjects, all topics are dealt with sufficiently. So just referring these 2 will suffice. Will be enough. Okay. But if suppose you want to read something more in detail, then you can refer to either of these 2 books. A History of Modern World by Jain and Mathur, or Norman Lowe's Mastering World History. But even if you want to, don't do it till I have taught all the topics. Okay. Once I finish all the topics and you have read NCERT, you have read my notes, then after that you can go and read either of these books. Not an issue. Okay. But not till then. Why? Because I want you to first develop the approach of how you need to prepare the subject. These books are fairly detailed, so you may get lost in the facts, and I don't want that to happen. First develop that approach, and then you can read any text in the world for that matter. I don't mind that. Okay, are you all with me? Okay, so after having seen sources, now let me share with you the 9C framework of studying any topic from history, for that matter, world history, ancient, medieval, whatever you're studying. What are these 9 C's? The first C is concepts. Okay. Guys, history is a subject on which everybody is an expert. You know? Anybody can talk about history. Why? Because it's easy. We feel that history does not have any concept. It's just a story. Yes, it is a story. But this story also has a lot of concepts and ideas. Unless you understand these concepts and ideas, you cannot appreciate the import of that story. Let me give you one example. There was a topic that you studied in your school times called as the Civil Disobedience Movement. Did you? Okay. So what is the meaning of civil disobedience, guys? To break the law. Okay. What else?
So,
Disobey the law, break the law. Do not join the government institutions. Okay, that is part of the program of civil disobedience. What else? I'm asking you the meaning of this phrase, civil disobedience. Yes, ma'am.
break the law by not getting violence.
Okay, very close. Yes.
Common people coming together and not against something.
Okay. Common people coming together and doing basically this idea. So the word civil is often wrongly interpreted as something being done by the civilians. In this, common people. Are you asking? But the word civil here does not mean that. Civil, see the translation in Marathi. Savinay Kaide Bhanga. You know that word Savinay? Vinay Purna Paddhati Madhe, where you do something in a civilized way. You are disobeying, no doubt about that. But how are you doing it? In a civilized manner. Okay. Bhagat Singh also broke the law and Gandhiji also broke the law. Okay. Revolutionaries also broke the law, right? But their method of breaking the law is very different. It involves some element of violence. Do you agree with this? Okay. But when we say civil, we are saying we are breaking the law, but we are not hooligans. Okay. We are doing it in a way that is civilized. Got my point? So this is a subject or topic that we have studied always. But generally speaking, in our schools or otherwise also, these concepts in history are not focused upon. And that is why our understanding can be limited. Okay. So whenever you study history, always emphasize on its basic concepts. In the class, in every topic, my first slide will be about what is American Revolution, what is French Revolution. We first summarize and understand what the basic concept or idea is. Yesterday, if you remember, we discussed the idea of nation, nationalism, state, nation state, building blocks. You have to focus on these ideas. In this exam, there is a premium on conceptual clarity. Never forget this. There's a premium on what? Conceptual clarity. There is nothing that is difficult in this exam. Okay. Any graduate can deal with the content of the exam. The only thing is you require a little bit of discipline. I'll share a formula with you guys. I want you to write down this formula. This is my formula for you for success in this exam. What is this formula? This formula will have one constant and two variables. Okay, one constant and two variables. Let me tell you what all is there in this formula. Right? Success in UPSC is equal to success in UPSC is equal to first, and this is the constant formula. Mein constant hamesha pehle aata hai. Okay. Constant is coverage of entire syllabus. Coverage of entire syllabus. And write in the bracket constant. Constant. Now, why I am saying what I am saying? Syllabus is same for all. You have a different syllabus and your friend has a different syllabus. Is it so? No. Topper also has the same syllabus. Shruti Sharma, she also had the same syllabus. So across India, this is constant. But the problem is, despite this being constant, students don't complete or cover the entire syllabus. And then they expect to clear this exam. How is it possible? जो defined तरीके से UPSC ने दिया है, वो पूरा आपने prepare ही नहीं किया है, तो कैसे आप पास होंगे? ठीक है? So this is the first aspect of this formula. After this, multiply. Multiply. And write a thinking mind. A thinking mind. And write in bracket variable 1. Variable 1. Okay. Now, why do I call this as a variable? Your ability to think is not related in any way to your age, to the education that you had before, to your academic performance in the past. Nothing. The way you think is something that you have developed. Okay. और आप जितना अच्छा और structured सोच सकते हैं, उतना ज्यादा यहाँ पर में multiply हो रहा है. It's not addition, it's multiplication. Okay. So that much more value you are going to add in what? In your success, your thinking. And here is the problem. Students just don't do this. I can't just emphasize it enough. They will come to the class, do all the lectures, write down all the notes, do everything except this thinking. अगर आप सोचेंगे नहीं तो सारा कंटेंट जमा करके करेंगे क्या भाई, है ना? So you have to spend time on reflecting on what you have studied. आ रही बात समझ में आपकी? ठीक है? Multiply that further and write effective expression. Effective expression. ठीक है? ब्रैकेट में वेरिएबल नंबर 2. Okay. So how does a candidate at the age of 21 barely graduate top in this exam, whereas a candidate with 6 attempts is not able to go past prelims or mains or interview? What is the difference? The formula. Okay. If that candidate at age of 21 has covered the syllabus, has a better thinking mind, has more effective articulate expression, then success can be assured. That is the difference. Okay. अब ये जो variables हैं, इसको कितना develop करें, sky is the limit for you. Getting my point? Vikalpa the other day was telling me, you know, Vikalpa 275 ranked this year. She and Shruti Sharma, All India rank 1. They have studied together in Jamia. So she was telling that Shruti Sharma in her previous attempt, by mistake, selected Hindi as her medium for examination. Okay. Can you imagine what big shock it would be to learn that too at a later date that you have selected a wrong medium for the examination. Yet she missed the interview call by 1 mark. Writing in a different medium. Preparation एक में क्या है, लिखा दूसरे के अंदर में. How is it possible? Thinking mind, effective expression and coverage. Okay. Even the change of medium did not stop her from reaching that level. Interview call missed by just 1 mark. Getting this? Okay. So you have to work on these aspects. So पहला C क्या है? I want you to say loudly. Concepts. Okay. Second C, conditions. What are conditions? Whatever happens in history happens in a particular context, in a particular background. Nothing happens in vacuum. Okay? So unless we understand the background, we cannot understand the event. Okay. Before revolt of 1857, there were some political, social, economic, administrative measures taken by the British that led to the revolution. So unless we understand these conditions, we can't understand the revolt of 1857. Okay. So always understand the background first. Getting this point? Number 2. Number 3, characters. In many historical events, you will come across some characters who have made some choices, and that has led to that particular event. What do characters do? They make choices. Okay. For example, people of France made a choice that we are not going to live this Kide Mungan Sayusha anymore. We want to live as full-fledged human beings, and we want individual rights for ourselves. So for that, we are ready to take on the monarch, absolute monarch of that day and age. We are ready to lay down our lives. What is this? This is a choice made by the characters. Had those characters not made those choices, that event would not have happened. Okay. Hence, it is crucial that we know about those characters and the choices that they made. Got this? 3C. क्या क्या बोला अभी तक हमने? Concepts. Characters. 4, characteristics. वैशिष्ट्य. Every event will have some unique characteristics which mark it out vis-a-vis others. अगर ये characteristics नहीं होती, so it would have been like any other event and we would not have studied. So there are some special characteristics. Like for example, you will study the Swadeshi movement in India during the freedom struggle, 1905. In this Swadeshi movement, for the first time we see participation of women in a remarkable way. It's a unique characteristic. Before this, women were not coming out on the streets. They were not participating in movements. We see emphasis on Swadeshi education. बच्चों ने ब्रिटिशों की स्कूल छोड़ दी और नेशनल स्कूल्स और कॉलेजेस में ज्वाइन हो गए. For the first time we see this uniqueness, and so we note those characteristics. Entrepreneurship. This movement, Swadeshi movement, spoke about building up Indian entrepreneurship. Acharya P.C. Ray starts Bengal Chemical Lab. Many other such initiatives are taken. क्या है ये? Characteristic है. It marks it out from others. So हर historical event की ऐसी कुछ characteristics होती हैं जो हमको पता होना चाहिए. Got this point? Next, fifth, chain. Now what's a chain? In that event, there will be multiple sub-events, one leading to another. So we must know what has happened and in what sequence. Very few, but significant events within that larger topic. So we must know the chain. Mangal Pandey refused to bite that cartridge, okay, and he was hanged. After that, the sepoys in Meerut revolt, and they go to Delhi to tell Bahadur Shah Zafar to become the leader of the rebels. Okay. Subsequently, other Rajas, Maharajas, Nawabs, they also start rebelling. What is this? Chain of events. Next C is climax. What is climax? Climax is the immediate end of that historical event. French Revolution ends with Napoleon coming to power. Immediate end. That is climax. But more important is consequence. Next C, 7. What is consequence? Consequence is the long-term implication. Revolt of 1857, immediate impact क्या है? East India Company का rule खत्म. Long-term impact क्या है? New policies of British government, divide and rule becomes more strong. Okay? Army reorganize की जाती है, more Europeans in the army. ठीक है? Legislative devolution, Charter Act 1861 पास होता है. ये सब क्या है? ये long term है. So consequence, long term. Do you understand climax and consequence now? Yes, no, can't say? Okay. Now the next two C's are very important. First is contemporary aspect. When you study one topic of history, always try to imagine what is happening in other places in the same time. Okay? Don't study history in isolation. The studying world, imagine what is happening in India at that point. When Americans are fighting for the Civil War, what is taking place here in India in 1860s? Okay? You must be alive to that. एक सिंपल थोड़ा सा यहाँ पर मैं जाते जाते एक बात याद आ गई तो बता के जाता हूँ. In Pune here, Mahatma Jyotiba Phule wrote a book titled Gulamgiri. Famous book, Gulamgiri. And you know to whom he dedicated this book? He dedicated this book to Abraham Lincoln and his struggle to abolish slavery. And he's writing this just a few years after Abraham Lincoln dies. So you can see the awareness, contemporary awareness of these people. So history जब आप पढ़ते हैं तो isolated तरीके से नहीं पढ़ना है. उसके lateral linkages, कहाँ पर क्या चल रहा है parallelly, that you must understand. Okay? जब तक वो आप नहीं समझेंगे तब तक उस event का significance नहीं समझना है. जब यूरोप में Bruno was being burnt at the stake, you know Bruno? Scientist Bruno, he was being burnt at the stake for claiming something that contradicted the Bible. Bible से आप गलत बोल रहे हो ना, Bible के हिसाब से, you will be burnt alive in front of full public spectacle. Okay? At that point in India, Akbar is having debates in his Ibadat Khana. He has Hindu priest, Muslim priest, he has Jews, he has Christians, he has Parsis, and he tells them, please tell me about your religion. I want to understand. Okay, and he asks questions to preachers of different. He was illiterate himself. So अकबर की greatness आपको तभी समझ में आएंगी जब आप उस वक्त दुनिया कैसी थी उसको समझेंगे. जब यूरोप ब्रूनो को मार रहा था for contradicting religion, Akbar was so tolerant that he was respecting other religions, wanting to understand and having these kind of debates. So इसका import कब समझ में आएगा जब आपको ये समझेंगे. रोशनी की importance तब समझ में आती है जब अंधेरा आप जानते हैं अंधेरे को. Okay, so contemporary. नेक्स्ट कंपैरिजन, कंटेम्पररी अगर आपने समझा है तो कंपैरिजन भी आप आसानी से समझ सकते हैं. UPSC in many questions will ask you to compare two different types of events, and only those students who have a real understanding of history can do comparison. Because for comparison, just mugging up of the facts is not enough. And I'll give you examples of questions that UPSC has asked, where explicitly as well as implicitly UPSC is expecting you to compare. So आप तीन मूवमेंट्स पढ़ते हैं, फॉर एग्जाम्पल गांधी जी के, नॉन कोऑपरेशन, सेकंड बड़ी मूवमेंट्स, सिविल डिसोबीडियंस, थर्ड क्विट इंडिया. Three major movements of Gandhi ji. How are these three movements? Same man leading it, same ideology, but yet these movements are different in their own light. So how are they different? That is the comparative aspect. Gandhi, UPSC ने आपसे पूछा था to compare the thoughts of महात्मा गांधी एंड सुभाष चंद्र बोस. हिस्ट्री में क्वेश्चन पूछा है ना आपसे मेंस में. UPSC had asked how Baba Saheb Ambedkar's approach for upliftment of the scheduled caste was different as compared to that of Mahatma Gandhi. कंपैरिजन पूछा कि नहीं आपसे? ठीक है. सो कंपैरेटिव अप्रोच इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. समझ में बात आप लोग को? चलिए आगे बढ़ते. ओके, तो ये तो हो गया थोड़ा सा हमारा बैकग्राउंड टॉक. इसके बाद में वी विल सी the actual first topic of world history, which is industrial revolution. Let's start our discussion, and before that let me share with you the two questions that UPSC has asked on this topic. Let's see the first question. Why did the industrial revolution first occur in England? This is one part of the question. Discuss the quality of life of the people there during industrialization. Second part. And last part, how does it compare with that in India at present? Can you see comparison over here? And see, Amar, comparing what? Life in England at time of industrialization with life in India at present. Got this? और एक क्वेश्चन देखिए. Latecomer industrial revolution in Japan involved certain factors that were markedly different from what West had experienced. Latecomer industrial revolution in Japan involved certain factors that were different from that in the West. Which C is applicable here? Out of the 9 C's? Comparison? You agree with this? क्या compare हो रहा है? Industrial revolution of Japan versus industrial revolution of West. ठीक है? Can you see now the importance of C's? So आपने अगर इस तरीके से टॉपिक को देखा है, so structurally आपको बहुत easy हो जाता है क्वेश्चन को डील करने के लिए. चलिए आगे बढ़ते हैं, and let's see how we will cover this topic. Sub themes of industrial revolution. This topic. We will first see what is the basic concept, what is meant by industrial revolution first, then why it takes place in England first, then we will see its spread to other parts of the world, what were the consequences, and lastly its impact on colonialism and imperialism. This is how our discussion of the topic will advance. Okay. Shall we start our discussion of the topic, guys? Let us see the first concept. What is industrial revolution? Industrial revolution, as I mentioned earlier in the lecture, is what? It is a new system of production. हम किसी चीज को revolution क्रांति कब कहते हैं? When there is a sudden and massive, then we call it as a revolution. And what is this revolution connected to? It is connected to system of production. The way mankind produced goods, उस system में, प्रणाली में बदलाव आता है. So what is new in this system? Let's see that. Capital, भांडवल जिसको हम कहते हैं, machine tools, human labor, raw material. ठीक है? Capital, machine tools, human labor, and raw material. all of this is brought together in a single place called as factory. Okay? Centralization of entire process. This factory is connected with what? It's connected with power. Okay. Production is being carried out through power. अब पहले क्या होता था? Human hands, as in human power alone, or maximum animal power for something. Okay? But now we have mechanical power. So this power is being used. And using this factory carries out mass production in less time. Massive scale per production. 24 hours the factory can work. पहले जो वर्कर था वो कितने घंटे काम कर सकता था? Individually 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours maybe. ठीक है? Beyond that, human fatigue is bound to creep in. But here the factory can work 24 hours. So mass production, less time, and also of uniform quality. एक वर्कर दिन भर काम कर रहा है तो सुबह फ्रेश में जो जितना अच्छा काम करेगा उतना सेम शायद रात में ना कर पाए. Someday he may not be well, his quality might get affected, right? But machine को ऐसे फर्क पड़ता है क्या? नहीं. So mass production, less time, uniform quality, और ये था वो बड़ा क्रांति revolution which starts first in England and then spreads to other parts of Europe and then to different parts of the world and colonies also. Got this point? Basic concept समझ में आया आपको? What is industrial revolution? Can somebody tell me what is industrial revolution? Raise your hand and in your own words. Yes, madam.
Changing mode of production.
Okay.
From man-made to machine.
From man-made to machine-made. Okay. So she has very succinctly summarized the entire idea. It's very good. Okay. Brevity is the soul of wit. Shakespeare कहता है. Brevity मतलब briefness. किमान शब्द कमाल आशय. Minimum words and maximum meanings. Okay. You must be able to express your ideas in as less words as possible. This industrial revolution propels countries are forced to occupy more and more territory, especially in the tropical areas. Raw material can be sourced from there at a cheaper price. So India से हो रहा था ना, हमारे यहाँ से cotton, ये बेरार जो area है, आज हम जिसको विदर्भ का जो northern part है, that used to be called as बेरार during British times. So वहां से cotton source होता था, and that was sent to mills in England. So colonies were necessary for this purpose, and then also for markets for the finished goods. Cloth is being prepared in Manchester, but how many Britishers are going to buy it? In any case, their population is very less. Total population of Britain is less than our population of Haryana. Okay. Even in this day and age, in those times, you can imagine comparatively how less it would have been. Mula hi deva garchi pula munat munat. We have reached 1.35 billion odd. Right? So huge market today and even back then. So the taste of Indians was slowly changed by the Britishers. Suddenly we start to see that people are wearing a kurta. Sorry, people are wearing a suit over dhoti and kurta. Why so? Because the taste is being changed by the Britishers. Wearing a suit is considered as a mark of elite status. In North India, people started to wear a sherwani over kurta pajama. ठीक है? क्यों? ताकि मैनचेस्टर का कपड़ा बिक सके. Getting this point? So raw material and market propel this desire for imperialism. This is the idea of industrial revolution. All with me this far? Okay. Now, after having understood the basic concept, let us go to Europe and try to understand how modern Europe emerges. But to understand modern Europe, we have to understand medieval Europe first. And to understand medieval Europe, we have to know a little bit about ancient Europe also. Okay. So very quickly, let me give you an overview of these phases of Europe. You can see on the screen, the map reflects the territory of the Roman Empire in ancient times. Such a massive sprawling empire that spans from Britannia and Spain in northwest and west to Asia Minor in the east. North may right up to Germanic tribes ka area and in south, northern coast of Africa. The Roman Empire occupied such a massive territory. And when it occupied such a massive territory, it means it had at its disposal the resources and talents of this entire region. And they put it to the best use. And I often ask students in the class that why is it that Shah Jahan only built the Taj Mahal? Shah Jahan ne Taj Mahal kyun banwaya? Why not somebody else? Any chance? By any chance, anyone would like to guess? Why did Shah Jahan only build the Taj Mahal? Why not somebody else? Yes, any guesses? Yes.
He has the required capital.
Okay, very right. Shah Jahan's period is the high water mark of Mughal Empire. He has at his disposal the resources of a massive subcontinent. Of course, he has the ambition. He has the taste. He's called as the Prince of Builders. उसका शौक भी था वो. लेकिन सिर्फ शौक होने से काम होता है क्या? नहीं होता. एक बार एक क्लास में स्टूडेंट को जब मैंने ये सवाल पूछा, तो एक स्टूडेंट ने जवाब दिया था, sir, because he loved his wife a lot. Now, everybody loves his wife or spouse a lot, but can everybody build a Taj Mahal? No. You have to be Prince Shah Jahan at Emperor Shah Jahan at the peak of Mughal you can say empire. Only then you can build up something like a Taj Mahal. So what I'm trying to tell you over here is that this Roman Empire similarly had at its disposal great riches, great resources, and consequently they have many marvels to their credit. They built up roads that connect the entire empire. आज भी उसमें के roads use होते हैं by the way. Southern part of Italy में आज भी वो roads हैं. They built up massive stadiums. Colosseums कहते थे उस जमाने में, and the stadiums were so architecturally built that you sit anywhere in the stadium, you can see the arena without any obstruction to your vision. So it's an architectural marvel. They built the concept of arch. Marathi में कमान जिसको कहते हैं ना हम लोग. That architectural idea of arch comes from the Roman Empire. If you rotate an arch 360 degrees, what do you get? You get a dome, gumbad, इसको कहते हैं. That also comes from the Roman Empire. They developed very advanced system of law, administration, judiciary, all of that. So ancient Rome was a place that was thriving with these developments and innovations. Did you get my point this far? Yes, no, can't say? Okay. This starts to change from around 4th century. Okay. The Roman Empire is attacked from northern areas by Germanic tribes. And Romans slowly start to become weak because of their own weight. It's a massive empire. Okay. And it gets split into two parts. From here onwards, the discussion is very crucial, guys, because it will be linked to points subsequent that will be coming subsequently. So Roman Empire is getting divided into two parts: Western Roman Empire and Eastern Roman Empire. Okay. So from 4th century onwards, we say that slowly Europe enters into the medieval times, and the Roman Empire is split into two: Western and Eastern. In the next few centuries, the Western Roman Empire further fractures into smaller kingdoms. So you have Spain, you have France, you have smaller kingdoms in Italy, you have Switzerland, so on and so forth. The Eastern Roman Empire, on the other hand, it survives for the next about 1,000 odd years. It shrinks in area, but it survives. Got my point thus far? We saw in ancient a massive Roman Empire that was flourishing in all walks of human life. Medieval times, breakup, Western Roman Empire fracturing into smaller kingdoms, Eastern Roman Empire nevertheless surviving for about 1,000 years. All with me thus far? Everybody? Okay. Now, have you ever wondered why Europe is Christian today? Almost all of Europe believes in Christianity. How did this happen? You know where Christianity emerges? Christianity emerges over here, around Jerusalem, today's Israel-Palestine area. This is where Jesus Christ had come. And today, all of Europe is Christian. How did this happen? And when did this happen? So a quick link is required over here. So allow me to explain that. In this part of the world, that is Israel, Palestine of today, a community lived whom we today call as the Jews. Okay? Jews were followers of the Abrahamic faith. They believed in Prophet Abraham, the religion laid out by him, which is called as Judaism. Okay. The idea of the religion was good, but over the period of time, many immoral practices crept into the society, different from what the religion had taught. It happens with every society. Okay. So in such societies, reformers come to the fore who want to go back to the original practices, who want to teach a moral, principled kind of a life. So Jesus Christ was one such person who was trying to bring about reforms in this society. He is a Jew himself from that same community. Okay? Now the elites of the society do not like this reformer. Like it happens everywhere. All reformers are troubled during their lifetimes. बाद में उनके पुतले बनेंगे, हार डालेंगे लोग, वो सब बाद में होगा. पहले तो पत्थर खाने पड़ते हैं. Okay? So since he is challenging the elites of that time, okay? Because moral corruption जब आता है तो उसमें elite सबसे ज्यादा होते हैं, and they are benefiting from that corrupt systems and practices. So they don't want the reforms. So what do? They have him crucified by Roman authorities. They are living in Roman Empire. So rule Romans का है, territory उनकी है. So they have him crucified. Okay? At the time of his death, Jesus Christ did not have many followers, a few hundred maybe. Okay? After his death, these followers keep alive the teachings of Jesus Christ for next couple of centuries. And a Roman emperor by the name Constantine comes to know about this religion in the 3rd century. Okay? He likes the idea. Romans are not Christians by now. He likes the teachings of Jesus Christ and accepts this religion and becomes a very ardent supporter of it. Just like in India, when Ashok Maurya converted to Buddhism, it spread rapidly across the subcontinent. It's quite obvious. State एक तरीके से patronage मिल जाता है. So similarly, after Constantine became Christian in 3rd century, Christianity spreads to all of Europe. Did you get this point, ma'am? Okay. And parallelly, 4th century के आसपास हम देख रहे हैं Roman Empire split. We are going into the medieval age. Everybody with me? Okay. Now, what happens in this medieval age? Let us see that. Now that Europe is Christian, they follow a life in which church, the dominant institution of Christianity, church, is at the center stage. And this church is headed by a chief priest who is called as the Pope. Okay? Now, yesterday I told you the idea of Christianity is that man is born in sin. Okay? Adam and Eve committed a sin. So that's why we are born in sin. And the purpose of human life is what? Not Majani life. Purpose of life is that you have to get salvation from that sin and return to God, seeking his pleasure. Okay? So, human existence का कोई और aim नहीं है. खेल कूद, intellectual pursuits, all of this you are not supposed to do. You're only supposed to lead a moral life which will please God. Slowly, steadily, this institution of church becomes so dominant on the socio-cultural life that it ebbs out all the vitality from it. जिन समाजों के अंदर में सिर्फ धर्म 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 ही परस्यूट होता है, उन समाजों के अंदर में प्रगति नहीं हो पाती. Okay? Why? Because प्रगति के लिए, progress के लिए, you need to ask questions. Okay? You need to explore newer paradigms. Whereas religion and especially religious authority, what do? They don't allow you to ask questions. किताब में लिखा हुआ है, ऐसा so and so ने बोला हुआ है, you have to do accordingly only. Getting this? So this church-centric life changes Europe from the dynamism that it had during Roman times to a very saturated kind of a society. Got this point? Yes, no, can't say? Yes. Okay. Now, empire has gone. We only have what? We have kings in Western area. And these kings are dependent on the Pope Why? Because Pope is the person who gives them the authority. Yesterday we saw it is the religious authority that gives sanction. So king is now weak, unlike in times of Roman emperors. Roman times, the emperor was almighty, all strong. And because of that, decision making could be done more easily. Now, the Pope is heading the political life also indirectly in this manner. Got the second point? So weak kings. And these weak kings are further undermined by the feudal lords below him. What is feudalism? Feudalism is a system in which between the king or the state and its people, there is an intermediary layer who acts on behalf of the king. First, the king gave them the responsibility of collecting taxes from the people. Okay? Say, to give you an example, there's a king of Pune Zilla, Pune district. I'm making it very simple to make it easier to understand. There's a king of Pune district having 14 different talukas. So the king appoints one feudal lord each for every taluka. Okay? And he tells that feudal lord that from your taluka, you are supposed to collect taxes and give it to me. In return, you can keep a small share out of it. Okay? The feudal lord then says, my lord, to collect taxes, I need some force with me. So the king allows him, okay, take some extra money and maintain a small army with you so that people will fear you and they will pay the taxes to you. So see, the feudal lord is becoming strong. He is first of all becoming the intermediary. He is handling money, taxes. He also has a army now. Then he tells his king that I may be attacked by the people because I am collecting taxes for you. So I need to be protected. So the king allows him, okay, you build a manor or a castle for yourself. Gadi manto na apan Marathi mein. You can live in a protected environment so that you are not attacked. So these feudal lords start to live in protected small forts. Are you getting how the feudal lords are becoming stronger? After a few decades, these feudal lords have 4 to 5 sons each. Now they tell the king, I have served you all my life very faithfully. Now what about my sons? So the king says, okay, your power will pass on to your sons. It becomes hereditary. Okay. Now that one taluka which that feudal lord had, that gets divided into smaller parcels of land where these feudal lords, I mean the sons of the original feudal lord, they are going to discharge the same duty. So now we have more lords. Okay. Authority is getting dispersed and they are also becoming powerful because of hereditary nature of the office. Getting this point? Okay. Now these feudal lords start to challenge the king. The king is now weak. There are many feudal lords living in these castles and the king does not have a strong army. Army is with these people and consequently the position of the king becomes very vulnerable. Even if he decides that I want to punish this feudal lord and he takes his army to his castle, the feudal lord locks himself up from inside and the king is left outside in the cold waiting for him to come out. And that feudal lord has carried all the food, water, everything that is required for next 6 to 8 months. And inside he's having Majani life. Whereas the king and his army are doing an encirclement outside in the cold. You got this point? So slowly, steadily, from a strong Roman monarch, we are seeing an evolution of political system where the king is weak and there are multiple strong feudal lords. Got this idea? Yes, no, can't say? Yes, okay. Now, these feudal lords, they don't live in cities. Where do they live? They live in rural areas. To make you understand, these are like the Thakur Sahabs that you saw in the old Hindi movies. ठाकुर साहब जहां तक नजर जाती है वहां तक हमारी जमीन है, घोड़े पे यहाँ वहां घूमते रहते हैं, आओ कभी हवेली पर, ठीक है, ऐसे डायलॉग मारते हैं. So these are the feudal elements of the society. Okay. अब ये feudal elements city में नहीं रहेंगे, वो गांव में रहेंगे. Why? Because they are supposed to collect tax from whom? From the farmer. The farmer is there in the village, so the feudal lord also has to be close to him. वहां नजदीक रहना पड़ेगा उसको. ठीक है. So cities start to decay because the elites are not there in the city. When cities start to decay, automatically trade and commerce starts to suffer. And in any case, there are so many feudal lords, they slowly start to raise barriers on the trade routes. If you want to travel in the Pune district, where there is one king and many feudal lords, when you pass through area of one into another, you have to pay octroi. Zakat deni padti hai wahan par. So merchants ke liye bhi it is not economically viable to pay so many octroys for these feudal lords. So trade and commerce starts to vanish. Cities start to decay. Iske opposite Roman times mein ek hathi satta, okay, massive trade network, flourishing cities, trade and commerce was going on. Opposite of that in medieval times. Are you getting this? Okay. So economy gets ruralized and agriculture becomes backward. No new scientific developments because church and religion are dominant. So don't ask questions. Development kab hoga? When you have a critical thinking wala approach. Asa ka, when you ask this, you start to break newer grounds. Okay. But religion dominated society mein questioning is not allowed. Got this point? Yes, no, can't say? Okay. Now there is one practice that you must know about this period, which is called as the practice of serfdom. Nothing to do with the detergent. Serfdom is a practice in which hereditary serfs or bonded laborers are attached to the land. They're tied to the land. And they provide physical labor on that particular land. Okay. Their generations will continue to serve on that land, whosoever the owner might be. So मान लीजिए ठाकुर साहब की 1000 एकड़ जमीन है और उसपे 10,000 सर्व्स काम कर रहे हैं, ठीक है? वो सर्व्स और उनके बच्चे हमेशा वहीं पर रहेंगे और फ्री में वहां पर में ह्यूमन लेबर प्रोवाइड करते रहेंगे. Thakur Sahab might die and his son might come in his place, the serfs will continue. If the Thakur Sahab sells away his land to somebody else, they will continue to still serve on that land because they are tied to the land, not to the person. Getting this point? Slavery or serfdom mein ye difference hai. Slavery mein slave is attached to the owner. Serfdom mein he is attached to the land. Slave can go with the master. Okay. Serf cannot go anywhere. He has to stay on that land. So what happens because of this practice? A lot of valuable human resource talent is wasted in this way. Okay. There have been so many invasion guys of India from the northwestern part of our subcontinent. And these invaders came from basically two passes, Bolan Pass and Khyber Pass. Only two passes are there. If you see the width of these two passes, Khyber Pass agar aap dekhenge, at max 4 trucks can pass through it at one time, 4 trucks. But it did not occur to anyone that we should strategically hold and defend these passes. We had a massive population, yet the invading armies always had an advantage. Why? Because a lot of our human resource was wasted in the caste system. Do you agree with this? The right to wield swords was only with a particular class. Others could not do it. There would have been so many talented individuals who could have contributed in the defense of the country, but they did not get the opportunity. And for them, it did not make any difference. X ka raj aaya kya, Y ka raj aaya kya? I am supposed to suffer the same life. So there's no incentive for that person. He does not feel part and parcel of that organic whole society. He is an outcast. Okay. Similarly, in case of Europe, this practice of serfdom led to wastage of a lot of its talent. So this is the medieval period of Europe, the dark age of Europe. Did you understand now what is medieval times of Europe? Basic characteristics? Yes, no, can't say? Okay. ऐसे में एक बड़ा event होता है which is going to shape the course of future. Here you can see the city of Istanbul. Back then it was called as Constantinople. I told you Emperor Constantine, उसके नाम से Constantinople. ठीक है? This city is very strategically located because it is on the straits of Bosphorus and Dardanelles. Two straits are there here. एक यहाँ पर में और एक इधर. ठीक है? Whoever controls the city is able to control the trade in this region. And also the trade, overland trade going from Asia to Europe. Okay, this city of Istanbul was won by Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror in 1453. 1453 में. सर मेरी बात आपकी. This city is the capital of Eastern Roman Empire. So with it, the Eastern Roman Empire has got a mortal blow, and this important city has fallen in the hands of Ottoman Turks. Who are the Turks? They are tribals living in this area of Asia Minor. They create a kingdom and then go on to win this city. यहाँ तक बात समझ में आई आपकी? Yes, no, can't say. एक historian लिखता है कि of all the important events in history, he has ranked the top 100 events, top 100 most important events, and he says that this is the 7th most important historical event human history के अंदर. क्यों इतना important है वो अब आपको यहाँ आगे डिस्कशन में समझ में. Now, when the city of Constantinople falls, the overland trade route is threatened. This overland, Pushki Samarg Jalapan Manso, that is connected to the Silk Route. Okay? So goods carried from China and India find it very difficult to make it to Europe. And there is tremendous demand for Indian and Chinese goods in the market of Europe. India ke spices, India ke cotton, silk, muslin, all of these, ivory, all of this is in huge demand. Okay? So suddenly these luxury products are not there in Europe ka market. Pepper jante na kali miri? Pepper was very important for Europeans to preserve meat in their cold climate. और वो हमारे यहाँ केरला से निकलते थे. So can you imagine their food preservation depended on Indian products? Okay? There were many colonies of Romans on the coast of Kerala. Ussr नाम की एक प्लेस है केरला में, वहां पर एक thriving Roman colony हुआ करती थी. And how did these people travel? Through the overland trade route passing through Constantinople. So मैं एक बात आपकी, अब वो route threatened है, expensive है, dangerous है. इसलिए Europeans want what? They want alternate safe sea route to Asia in general and India in particular. Okay? Especially the Portuguese and Spanish are keen to find out this sea route. Why the Portuguese and Spanish only? Because next door to them is Italy, and Italy dominates the trade in Mediterranean Sea. There is a sea route also. Arabs, they used to come to India, coasts of India, buy stuff from here and take it to Arabia. They sold it on the Mediterranean coast to Italians, and Italians took it to Italy and from there to Europe. So Italians were earning huge profits. So Spanish and Portuguese people feel that we are being left out. So what do? They try to find out alternate safe route to India. Parallelly around this time, people like Newton, Galileo, Kepler, many other scientists who have traumatized your childhood, they have made their discoveries in the 14th and 15th century. So the age of science and reason, Vivek, iski shuruaat hoti hai. ठीक है? And Europeans, the Portuguese and Spanish, they feel that let's give science a chance instead of religion. Science says that the world is like an elliptical ball. Bible says it's flat like a plate. If it is flat, then there's an edge, and if you reach the edge, you will fall off the world. Okay? Science says no, it's like an elliptical ball. So the Portuguese and Spanish feel that if it is a ball indeed, then if we circumnavigate around the globe, then at some point we will reach Asia. Then we can find out our way to India. Okay? So they set out sail based on this idea. Also parallelly, there is a movement called as Enlightenment that has started in Europe, where new political ideas are coming up and influence of church is starting to decline. Society is now changing. ऐसी सिचुएशन में यूरोपियंस जो है वो बाहर निकल पड़ते हैं अटलांटिक ओशन में टू फाइंड आउट इंडिया. सर मैं सारा फ्लो आप लोगों को मैं आपको एंशिएंट, मिडिवल और फिर इस इंपॉर्टेंट हिस्टोरिकल इवेंट तक यहां तक लेकर के आए. ऑल विद मी दस बार? यस नो काइंड से? ओके. So these people, they set out sails, without knowing that on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, there are two huge land masses and they can't cross over so easily. So they make accidental geographical discoveries because of this. Columbus, Amerigo Vespucci, Jacques Cartier, and many such other names can be cited. These are people who were the initial pioneers in this process. आज हमारे लिए बोलना बहुत आसान है दोस्तों. Today if you see, one of the most risky jobs is that of an astronaut. I think you will agree with that. When Kalpana Chawla's space shuttle, it met with that accident. I had read at that time, the angle of entry into atmosphere was wrong. Consequently, there was friction and a blast. Scientists say that that blast was so sudden that before human brain could register what has happened, the temperature rose to such a degree that their bodies would have vanished literally. That was the kind of accident that took place. This is the risk that astronauts take. But I say even bigger risks were taken by these explorers. Astronauts know what can go wrong, how they can control. There is communication system. They are trained for that purpose. But these people, they had nothing of that sort. Their religion was saying that you are going to fall off the edge. Along the way, there were pirates of the Caribbean who could make a biryani out of you and have in dinner. Right? There were storms in the ocean. And once you set sail, probability said that there was only 30% chance that you will come back alive. Only 30% chance. Okay? Yet, these men went out and did these discoveries. Consequently, in these distant lands, new colonies emerged. European countries established people in these newfound lands and created colonies for themselves so that the natural resources could be exploited and markets could be created. So, once these colonies emerge, then starts long distance trade between Europe and these colonies. Okay. Sequence on there, 1453, fall of Constantinople, search for sea route to India, accidental discovery, creation of colonies, and once colonies start, then long distance trade. जितना ज़्यादा risk होता है venture में, business में, उतना ज़्यादा profit होता है. When Vasco da Gama, India's national mama, came, for every 1 rupee that he invested, he earned a profit of 60 rupees. आज की डेट में अगर business में you get a profit of 33% in a year, that is considered as very handsome. Okay, this man is earning 60 rupees for every 1 rupee invested. Can you calculate the percentage of profit that he's having? Massive. Okay, 5,900% ka profit. 33% is handsome today. Okay, so because of this massive profit, the merchants who are doing this trade, they have accumulated capital. भांडवल. Okay, industrial revolution के लिए क्या चाहिए दोस्तों? सबसे पहले, got the idea now? Where is that capital going to come from? It is going to come from this trade. Okay, and who are these merchants? These merchants are not the Thakur Sahibs of the day. Thakur Sahib is happy in his village, running around with his horse, asking people to kya vadevarti. Okay, these are people who are from a different class. They are the Dhirubhai Ambanis of the day, starting out at very low levels, investing, reinvesting, investing, reinvesting, and making massive profits in the process. And then these are the same people who will invest into industry. समझ मेरी बात आपकी? Yes, no, can't say? Yes. Okay. Ab last point for the day, and then I'll close. Just one last point for the day. Now, in Europe, these merchants are facing the problem of feudal lords. ये लोग जहां भी ट्रेड करके आते हैं, अपना सामान यूरोप भर में ले जाना चाहते हैं, जगह जगह पर में ये फाटक लगा करके फ्यूडल लॉर्ड्स रुके हुए. Before GST in India, we had multiple taxes. Right? Pune district के अंदर में, Pune city में, if you were taking stuff from Pune city to Pimpri Chinchwad, you had to pay a tax over there. You're crossing Pune Municipal Corporation into TCMC area. So imagine across India, if you traveled how many different octroi you had to pay, हर state का अपना indirect tax, ठीक है, all that was complicated and cascading. Same thing they are facing over here. So they go and tell the king कि माई बाप आप इस देश के राजा हो, ठीक है, लेकिन आपके राज के अंदर में we are facing a lot of harassment by these ठाकुर साहब of the day. You have political legitimacy. More tax instead of paying these 100 fellows. Okay, we will pay you more. The king says, I also want to, my father wanted to, my grandfather wanted to, but nobody could do anything because these fellows, they run into their castles. They lock themselves up from inside and my army is standing in the cold outside. What should I do? So the merchants say there is a technological revolution that has taken place. Gunpowder artillery has started. Topkhana. Okay, we can build up big castles, big cannons for you. We will bring cannon powder from India. India में by the way salt peter मिलता था. It's a mineral. उससे gunpowder बनता है, दारू गोला मराठी में जिसको कहते हैं. That is used in artillery to fire. So they say you don't worry about the money part. We will get everything for you. Okay? You have the political legitimacy, the authority, and the army. So we will build up these guns. You blast your way through the castles of these feudal lords. Magte zamini varti yekti. Okay. So what does the king do? Very good. Give me the money. I build up the army. और सारे ठाकुर साहब जो है वो आकर के सरेंडर हो जाते हैं. Because now they can't hide behind their walls. समझ में बात आपकी? So वो जो authority ऊपर से king Roman emperor के टाइम से नीचे को dissipate हो गई थी to feudal lords. Now because of gunpowder artillery revolution, that again gets concentrated up in the king and we see emergence of absolute monarchies in your concept. Okay, what is meant by absolute monarchy? 2 points to remember there. First point is the king or the monarch claimed a divine right to rule. क्या claim करता है वो? Divine right to rule means God has appointed me to rule over you. 1. Number 2, Shivagamini. मेरा वचन ही है शासन. My word is the law. आमी मंडार तो शब्द. All power is concentrated in the hands of the king. So can you see another major political change in Europe now? Emergence of absolute monarchies. समझ में यहाँ तक बात आपकी? Yes, no, can't say. Once the absolute monarch emerges, last 30 seconds. Once the absolute monarch emerges, now there is concentration of power. पूरे देश में एक का ही राज चल रहा है. All the octroi, everything is gone. So now trade and commerce starts. Okay, cities start to emerge. Monetary economy is used. आपको पता है महाराष्ट्र में there was a system called as बलूतेदारी system. You know that? 12 जाति 12 बलूतेदार. Okay, what was the system? This was a system of means of exchange without using money. Money की जरूरत ही नहीं थी. ठीक है, वैसे ही medieval यूरोप के अंदर में feudal system में money was hardly used. Okay, exchange goods and services पे होता था. ठीक है, अब वो जाकर के monetized economy की शुरुआत होती है, trade and commerce की शुरुआत होती है, cities का emergence होने लगता है. समझ में आपको यहाँ तक? Now Europe is poised to enter into the modern phase. And Europe will enter into the modern phase in my next lecture. Okay, I'll call it a day here. Thank you very much.